are over 70 million fathers in the U.S. Inventive fathers, athletic, brave. But not everyone knows who their father is. For 40 years, we thought we did, until today.
I wasn't sure who your father was.
How does that work?
It was the crazy 70s. Monogamy wasn't exactly a priority.
I've always wondered where I got my zest for lovemaking. Now we know.
Our father's been out there this whole time.
Here we go.
Operation Who's Your Daddy? The top mission is finding dad. Submission is going to be having stone crabs. Mission below that, getting you laid.
Mom actually dated Terry Bradshaw? Do you remember a woman named Helen Baxter?
Talk about a blast from the past. She had the tightest ass you've ever seen. Mouth and that tongue and a set of knockers. Damn near cost us the Super Bowl.
She's our mom.
Why don't you just stop this foolishness?
This is it.
What are you doing here?
We think we're your sons.
Excuse me for a minute.
There is no way those two jackasses are my kids.
He runs hot, just like you. Give the man a ride.
He could easily be a serial killer.
Are you a serial killer?
I am not a serial killer.
You just emphasize the word serial. Like I'm a killer, but I'm not a serial killer.
But that was totally unintentional.
You're still not saying, I promise I'm not a killer. We can give you a ride, but those aren't too tight, are they?
Almost kill you, can't kill you.
Oh, Dad. We got a runner!
You shot Dad.
What was that?
I think it was a person.
The universe has a tendency to point in the right direction.
Yes.
Guys, my Negro spider senses is tingling. It's not the Soul Train, guys.
Father figures.
Does the name Helen Baxter ring a bell?
It does more than ring a bell. She was like a dick whisperer.
She's our mom.
All we did was cut her.
Everybody, please give a round of applause for Ed Helms. Let's hear it. Mr. Helms, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Congratulations on another great comedy.
Thank you. I'm looking uptight as usual.
Do you feel like you usually play uptight?
I don't know. I feel like there's a version of there's a version of me that sort of has emerged in movies. Stu Price, my Hangover character, this guy. Those kind of uptight guys.
Are you uptight personally? You always seem relatively laid back when you come in.
Super chill, bro.
That was really uptight. Those are the words of an uptight man.
I was trying really hard to be chill. I actually I'm a little uptight, but I'm not like wound up. I'm not like this guy. He looks terrified.
Good on you for being able to even say I'm a little uptight. I mean, most people would never be able to, I think, admit it. Everybody wants, yeah, super type A, very uptight.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Very specific and particular about everything around me at all times.
Good. Yeah.
Speaking of The Hangover, this is actually directed by a guy that worked on the Hangover movies with you, right?
That's right. Lawrence Sher. It was the director of photography on all three Hangovers, and Due Date as well. And so, yeah, I know we go way back. We've been sort of in the trenches together, and this is his first movie as a director.
Was he on board before you got on board, or did you get on board and then you guys got Larry because you'd been working with him for so long and it seemed like it'd be fun?
That's a great question. You know, this kind of initially came together a few years ago, and I honestly can't remember if I was on board before Larry, but either way, it just was such a no-brainer to go back to work with him. You know, we're so close, having been kind of in the trenches for so long. I just knew he'd be a great director. I knew his sensibility. I know his sort of communication skills, his leadership, kind of how he runs a set, and he stepped up and he nailed it.
It's something that people don't often talk about when it comes to movie sets. The director is always talked about as a person who has a rapport with the actors, but the cinematographer very much also has to have a great rapport with actors.
Yeah, I mean, a movie set is kind of like, what's a good analogy? It's sort of corporate or military. It's like it's a top-down thing. So the director is kind of in charge of everything, but then within the departments and photography being a pretty big department on a set, you have, they're sort of running that group. And so you really get a sense of everybody's sort of skill set as not only in their creative field, and Larry has an incredible eye, as you can see in all the Hangovers. They're beautiful looking movies. And he's also just a good leader, which is what you need.
Yeah, you need to feel comfortable when you're doing a comedy like this, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Doing somewhat embarrassing, silly stuff in
You're
front of
putting yourself out there. Yeah. Well, it's funny too, you don't always think of a cinematographer as contributing to the comedy of a movie, but Larry was indispensable in all the Hangovers in kind of figuring out the best way to shoot things, not just to make it look beautiful and cool, but to be the funniest it could be. And so that I think kind of lent more to my confidence in him as a director.
What was it like making this movie with this incredible cast? I mean, some of these people are in numerous scenes, some are in like one scene, but I mean, every other scene you're kind of like, oh my God, now this person is here?
I know, yeah, and it actually, to see everyone in one place like this, it's totally overwhelming. I mean, I've been a huge fan of Owen's since Bottle Rocket, and I'd never actually met him. But I just think he's one of the most effortlessly hilarious people. So when that came together, when that locked in, it was just like, great, can't wait to make this movie. And then the cast just kept getting more and more stacked. And with Glenn Close as our mom, J.K., Kat, Ving. Here's the big surprise. Terry Bradshaw is an amazing actor. He is as good, if not better, an actor than he was a quarterback. You heard it here first.
What was that like when you got on set with him for the first time and saw him doing his work? Were you blown away?
I was blown away, but here's the funny thing about Terry is that he's so unbelievably charismatic, both in person and on screen. Like I don't know, I'm not a big sports fan, but I've seen him on covering the NFL, and he's bigger than life. And he's that way, just walking around in person. And then in the movie, like, it's not fair. Like, you don't get to win 4 Super Bowls and be an awesome actor. That's just not fair. I don't know.
A seemingly like decent person at the same time.
Yeah, and also like the most lovely, hilarious guy to be around.
So did you kind of feel with him the way your character kind of feels about his character in the movie?
Yeah, that's a funny bit in the movie is that my character was obsessed with Terry Bradshaw as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And so our first clue is that Mom thinks actual Terry Bradshaw, might be our dad or is our dad. And so so my character is just flipping out about that. He's so excited. We go and we meet him, and tiny spoiler alert, Terry takes a huge shine to me. And so it's very much this kind of dream come true.
To you, though, specifically.
Yeah, just to my character, yeah.
Not Owen's character.
Yeah, not Owen's character, yeah. I don't want to spoil too much. That's a very funny dynamic that kind of, that evolves between the three of us. And then, and yeah.
What's it like working with, I mean, as you said, Owen's got like a effortlessly sort of funny way about him, and I completely agree going back to Bottle Rocket. But there's a moment in this movie that I love so much, which is so small, and it's like in the middle of a montage where you're sleeping and Owen honks the horn to wake you up, and you say, "What was that?" And he says, "Nothing." And there's something so Owen Wilson-y about him doing that in that moment, and it's such a great example of how he can be hilarious, yet he's really good at big comedy as well. How do you sort of work those two things together with him?
I think that's a great example of Owen's comedy because there's a mischievousness to him, and he's sort of like a trickster, and he's always kind of goading you and messing with you in fun, kind of harmless ways.
Offset too?
Yeah, it's just who he is, and I think this movie, I think really is like I feel like Owen Owen Wilson as a person really comes through in his character Kyle in some nice ways. He's a little bit, both of our characters go through these arcs, and in the beginning of the movie, neither one of us is particularly lovable, but at the end, I think we both kind of land in places that are closer to who we actually are. And I forgot your question. Emma, did I answer it?
I might have forgotten it too.
Yeah.
But that was a good answer for whatever it was we were talking about.
Wherever we got. Yeah, it was good.
What do you love about doing comedies?
They're funny. It's all I ever wanted to do was be in comedy and make funny stuff. But it's just since I was a little kid, I just loved Saturday Night Live. I loved the big summer comedies, Vacation, and all the
which you got to be.
Which I got to be a part of the franchise. Join the universe. Yeah. And it's I actually think comedy is done. I mean, it's like anything. To do it really well is very hard, and it takes a lot of effort and toil and sort of sweat. And I love that because it's such a measurable thing. You can tell by an audience response if you succeeded or not, and it's not always easy to tell with other kinds of art forms or other genres.
Is it easy to tell on set, or is it just sort of easy to tell with an audience? Because on set, no one can really laugh, and I mean, every now and then someone will break, but you can't really,
I think on a set when something's working, and usually you can't really laugh during a take, but sometimes I'm horrible at breaking during takes.
Are you really?
Yeah, there's actually Owen's brother Andrew has a cameo in this movie, and to me it's really quick, but it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. And
where did that come from? I don't want to spoil it because
I won't tell you what it is. But
where did the ideas for that come from? It's out of nowhere.
I think Andrew was just on set a lot, hanging out, and we just were doing these bits and making each other laugh. And Larry was like, "That's gonna be this scene that we're about to do. Like this bit you're doing is gonna be the scene." And that's a great example of a time where I must have ruined like 15 takes because Andrew was making me laugh so hard.
It's really funny.
Yeah. And he's like Owen in that he's so small as a performer. Like his delivery, I'm a little bit more histrionic. Like I'm a little bit bigger of a more presentational performer. But Owen can make you laugh, and his brothers Luke and Andrew, like they can make you laugh with just these little like looks or really soft kind of a soft comment that just lands exactly right. It's pretty remarkable.
Oh, well, Owen's thing to me has always been an unshakable belief in whatever like his character is saying in that moment, no matter how silly it is. Like an optimism in something that is totally
an earnestness.
Yeah,
he's always sort of speaking from the heart.
And it goes back to Bottle Rocket.
Yeah. Even when he's being kind of even when he's not doing the right thing, he's doing it for the right reasons or something. Yeah. It's great.
You have a special coming to Comedy Central, I believe, next week, right?
Yeah, a week from today. It'll be on Wednesday, December 13th.
And you're just producing this, right? Because it's the Fake News with Ted Nelms. It's someone.
Nice try. I am producing it, and I wrote on it.
If I went through with that.
But Ted Nelms is played by me, Ed Helms.
Oh.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the Fake News with Ted Nelms.
Yeah, the Fake News with Ted Nelms is exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of a. I like to describe it as if Monty Python did a news show, or if the Zucker brothers, if Naked Gun was a news show. It's just incredibly silly and ridiculous news. It's all made up. It's completely fake, and I'm the anchor. I'm like the Wolf Blitzer of this 1 hour show, and it looks like CNN. I mean, we really went to great lengths to use the graphics and the way that CNN and Fox News and MSNBC, the way they all look and feel. That's what this show is.
Thanks for inviting me into your home. I love what you've done with the place.
In an age of fake news,
Can we even show that? That's rated R.
only one man brings you actual fake news.
What's that? At the White House. President Donald Trump, cell phone battery has died.
He's fairly unbalanced.
Hurt me on. Yeah.
He's got a BS in journalism.
You make me sick. Hashtag gross.
He's Ted Nelms.
Dun, 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 dun.
At this point in time, is it, because I mean, when we used to make fun of news, I think 10, 15 years ago, really the target a lot of the time was, I mean, it was all of them but Fox. And now at this point, is it sort of easier to make fun of CNN because it's just Fox is sort of on its own whole other thing? And how can we even...
Well, I think that it's really weird that, you know, whether or not you think Fox News is doing a bad job or CNN or MSNBC are doing a bad job, really, unfortunately, it just depends on your political disposition. But if you take a step back and you kind of look at all of them together and look at what they're all doing, they have way more in common than they have differences. And that's what we sort of focused on, is all the things that they all do. They all sensationalize things. They all sort of gin up conflict where it doesn't need to be. They all sort of build up anticipation for things that are kind of schlocky or gross, and they're all basically just cage match journalism. It's just fighting. And I remember when I was on The Daily Show, Jon Stewart went on Crossfire and said, "You guys..."
Great clip, yeah.
Yeah, he said, "You guys are hurting America." And CNN canceled Crossfire in a moment of, like, you know, introspection and I think questioning, is this the right thing?
And where did the host of Crossfire end up afterwards?
Tucker Carlson wound up on Fox News. God bless him. I mean, it's a weird thing, but I think that a lot of news is not just the news itself, but the presentation of news is very cynical, and it's very manipulative, and that's what we really wanted to have fun with and target. And
it's dominated by dollars, so it presents people end up having it permeates a kind of cynical attitude in regards to the news for the audience.
And for people who are saying, you know, Fox News is so right wing and it's so biased, they're right. But the people that are saying CNN is biased, they're right too. And I think CNN, especially in the Trump election coverage, CNN really started to kind of lose its. It used to have a very credible argument for being like, we really fight to stay honest and fight to stay. And now even CNN, and I like them all. I mean, I watch them all, and I get information from all of them. But you really have to consciously parse the dispositions of the presenters and what they're kind of selling or angling. And
did you choose? Was Wolf Blitzer your sort of go-to anchor when you were thinking about your anchor?
Yeah. So Ted Nelms, you know, we really didn't want to do what Colbert did so brilliantly with the Colbert Report, which was kind of a Bill O'Reilly type character, or Sean Hannity. We really wanted to take the spin kind of joke out of it. And yeah, so we went for those to emulate those anchors like Wolf Blitzer or Shepard Smith or Britt Hume or people. I mean, they all fit somewhere on the ideological spectrum, but they.
I see Blitzer as a more center right kind of guy.
Well, he certainly makes that effort, and that's appreciated. I mean, I think that's the best you can ask of any news person, is to try to present fair information. And so that's really what the fake news with Ted Nelms is. We use that model as opposed to the more sort of ideologue model.
When you approach doing a sort of Zucker-esque performance of an anchor man, what are the beats or the notes that you're hitting that when you watch an anchor man, you're like, oh God, I gotta do that?
Well, I mean, Wolf cracks me up because he's almost robotic. Yeah. And even when he gets in heated exchanges at times with politicians who are kind of dodging his questions, like.
But he doesn't change.
But he doesn't change. He's like, he never gets emotional, and I love that. I think it's actually brilliant and effective for him as a news presenter. And so that really was sort of, I think, the gravitas, the things that I went for in creating Ted Nelms were the gravitas, the occasional emotional slip where sort of opinion gets in there, or also.
It's got to be hard for anchors trying to remain center these days to not let opinions slip in there here and there.
And they don't.
You got to feel.
I mean, they really don't anymore. It's not. Even the best ones are. Their opinions are slipping in there, and like I said, I mean, I think I don't really fault anyone who's trying to do a good job. I think it's hard. It's a hard job.
One of the things I love about Blitzer, and everybody does it on CNN and probably the other networks as well, I just happen to watch CNN the most, is he calls breaking news every time he goes to commercial break or comes back to from a commercial break. Could be news that's like 3 days old, and he's like, breaking news on CNN, and it's like, no, that's old news.
Yeah, it's literally like just the fact that he's saying it again is what's breaking or something. It's a weird... Yeah,
keep you watching. Breaking news. Breaking
CNN
news.
has pretty much ruined the concept of breaking news. Right. They've really overused it, and that graphic flies in, and we have fun with that on our show. Just that the drama and the totally manufactured drama. It's
of course, yeah.
And if it's a slow news day, like you find something and you make it scary. Yeah.
It's I mean, you talk about sensationalized. Just as an example with CNN, last week on Friday, I was trying to watch footage of the tax bill get voted on, and all I could find was Roy Moore footage on CNN, and there was no new Roy Moore story.
By the way, that's a great example. That's a great example of if you want a lesson in how kind of divided our media is and how partisan our media is, including CNN. Just flip between Fox News and CNN on any given day. And what the difference in what they're covering, just their editorial decisions on what they're presenting speaks volumes about their political dispositions. And this is no secret. I'm not like, I don't pretend to be like, guess what? This breaking news. I've uncovered the truth here. But it is something that I think people who really subscribe to one or the other don't realize. Yeah. And it's important to look at both. It's important to look at not just what's being said, but what choices are being made about what to cover. And that's the only way, I think, for us as consumers to stay responsible to ourselves. If we're only sort of guzzling from the Fox News fire hose or the MSNBC fire hose, then we're not doing ourselves a favor. I mean, I literally read Breitbart and Huffington Post back to back. I jump between them, and
you read Breitbart?
Yeah, I get in there.
How does it go?
What do you mean?
What's it feel like? Do you want to take a shower afterwards?
It's what a lot of people are thinking and feeling out there. And I'm not always psyched about what I'm seeing, but but it actually contextualizes the other side. Like you look at Huffington Post and you're like, okay, well, the same things that are like firing me up with this publication, they're firing up these people over here. Like what I like is firing up these people. And who's right? Right. And I think to be responsible, like we just have to ask that question a lot. Of ourselves and of our media.
I think outside of just the partisan divide, when it came to the Roy Moore tax bill thing, there's also the element of just lowest common denominator editorial decisions that go on with these networks because they are a business. They are essentially a corporate news operation. Oftentimes, instead of covering policy or something that has far more ramifications, they are covering some sort of sex scandal. And that's not to delegitimize or trivialize any of the sex scandals happening right now, but there are important policy decisions taking place.
Well, I think that when CNN canceled Crossfire, that was sort of the last decision based on kind of like journalistic integrity or maturity, I should say, that really, because now when you
turned everything else into Crossfire,
every single segment on CNN is a version of Crossfire. Corey Lewandowski versus Van Jones or who, just it's just these cage matches. And by the way, these are smart, reasonable people, but they are put in a cage match context and they're fired up and they get mad at each other. And I don't know.
No center between.
We love to watch it.
Van and Corey Lewandowski. Like no one's going to come to a consensus there.
Yeah. And Jeffrey Lord, who was just.
That was my personal favorite.
Yeah. I mean, that was really sad to me. That was just putting him on the air is saying he's valid.
Yeah.
And he was, like, to me, he was sort of like the Grim Reaper of reasonable news.
The Grim Reaper from his Reagan room. Did you ever see, like, when he was on webcam and he had, like, his Reagan room behind him? That was, like, my favorite thing, a shrine of Reagan. Let's get some questions from the audience. Who has a question?
Hi. My question is, out of all the characters that you've ever played, which one do you think best represents your own personality?
That's a great question. There's certainly bits of my personality that float into every character I've ever played. I hope this isn't disappointing, but I don't think I'm super close to Andy Bernard. Maybe I am closer than I would like to admit, but I actually think, as we were talking earlier, that in this movie, the arc that my character goes through towards the end of the movie, the character settles into a version that I think is really quite close to me. There's a movie that we just shot that's coming out next summer called Tag, and that's a big comedy. And that one actually was really fun, and that felt pretty close to who I am. So keep an eye out for that one.
Is closer to who you are someone that you would say is slightly uptight but isn't really wound up at all?
Well, yeah, and also not as sort of jaded and cynical as some of these, as like.
That's true. He's pretty big.
Yeah, Peter starts out in this movie. Peter's my character. He starts out in a pretty dark place, and I think we've all been through those phases in our lives. But now I'm in a much more, I don't know. I try to have a much more benevolent disposition towards the world and towards people.
When did that start? That is not meant to be a funny question.
How quaint. It took a lot of effort because I think I just went through some dramatic, I wouldn't say traumatic, but dramatic changes in my life, and a big one being after the Hangover movies, just sort of coming to terms with a new reality and being a public person, and I feel like there's sort of, you have to choose. Are you going to get sort of dark and jaded in dealing with these changes? And I had some personal changes in my life, or are you going to try to sort of latch on to hope and positivity in some way? And they're hard to grasp sometimes, but it's worth the fight. I mean, just to try to stay positive. And it's affected a lot of my choices in the things that I've been working on and trying to pursue. And it's why, making a show like, as much as I love The Daily Show, Seth Meyers, Weekend Update, Sam B., John Oliver, I mean, these are people that I know and love and think are brilliant and hilarious. I wanted to sort of have fun with the news medium in a different way that to me felt a little more joyful or lighthearted, as opposed to kind of focusing on the on hypocrisy as a joke engine, which is really what I think my time at The Daily Show was about. And it's a wonderful thing, and I'm glad it's being done, and it still makes me laugh. But I think there was something, I don't know. I wanted to create a show that I think people of all political stripes can laugh at, hopefully. That's not to say it won't like rub some nerves raw here and there. I hope we do from a satirical standpoint, but I also hope that it kind of lets people laugh at themselves, and I think we kind of punch equal opportunity punching on our show.
Did it feel, you said that the, hope and positivity are sort of hard to grasp at times. Did it feel easier to fall into kind of a dark, cynical trap after a certain amount of becoming a public person in some way, because so much of being a public person at that level means that you have to kind of sort of crouch down a little bit and not be seen when you don't want to be seen.
Well, yeah, a lot of these sort of feral, very primal instincts kick in that are protective, and you know, when people when you get recognized at an airport and you get, you know, suddenly you don't have control over your environment in a way. And that's very jarring, and it's scary. And I think, like I said, there was a point where I sort of had to choose, you know, one of three things. Like, either I just step away from all this, or all this that I've worked really hard for and that I think I love, or I can kind of like try to stay in it and fight it, and which was a recipe for kind of, I don't know, just not feeling good. Or I can just push forward and strive to be a more, like I said, just have a more benevolent disposition, and not try to let my expectations dictate my reactions to things. You know, if I want something to go a certain way, I'll just be okay if it doesn't go that way.
Right. Next question.
So, like you said, you're a big fan of comedies. You've been in a lot, like The Office, Hangover, Vacation, now Father Figures. I was just wondering, what kind of comedy can we expect to see in a movie where it's about finding your actual dad?
Well, it's a road trip comedy, so you're going to see a lot of that, the sort of episodic events throughout the movie. It's an R-rated comedy, so there's some bodiness to it. As you saw in the trailer, we have some absolutely hysterical people in it. But you're right that it also grapples with some pretty heavy issues. And I'm actually, one of the reasons that I was really drawn to the movie is that I love how it pays off these very important questions about family and identity and how we relate to our family members. You know, tiny spoiler alert, it has quite a poignant turn in the movie, and I'm proud of it because I really believe we earned it. And I think that that as much fun as you're having along the way and laughing with the sort of raucous ride, that the movie kind of sneaks up on you, hopefully, and actually warms your heart a little bit, I think. Which is also why it's a great holiday movie. I mean, it's kind of, at the end of the day, so many families now are not that traditional model that the mom, dad, and 3 kids or whatever. It's more complicated than that, and this is a little bit of an homage to that, just how messy families are.
It's wonderful. It's a twist you don't see coming, and I hesitate to even call it a twist because it is something that's earned and is an emotional moment. You know, I didn't spend the twist going, oh, I was like, oh, that's nice. Yeah. You know, I think we have time for one more question. Hello.
Hey.
I like all your pins.
Thank you. I got it thrift shopping. It's really
Flair.
cool,
Looks
right?
fabulous.
Salvation Army, it was only $1. The best things you find are only $1. Anyways, concerning the sexual misconduct that has really captured the attention of the media, especially in the acting industry for weeks now, what do you think your role is in preventing that as not only an actor, but specifically as a male actor?
I think that's a great question. Thank you. It's important to for all of us to just examine how we're behaving, examine how we're thinking, and to support people who are courageous enough to speak out. And I think you know, if a lot of men are scared in the workplace for a couple of years while this kind of is churning, and the result is that they behave better, then that's a small price to pay, and that's really quite okay.
There's been the weirdest articles that come out about this. Men are worried about hugging in the workplace.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, fine.
That's not that's worse than a woman getting, or that's not as bad as a woman getting sexually harassed.
Yeah, and deal with it, and it'll shake out, and however long it takes for us to sort of find a new equilibrium, and and yeah, it's worth the price of some anxiety about getting it right, because it's worth it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Ed, Father Figures, when can people see Father Figures?
So Father Figures will open December 22nd.
December 22nd, nationwide, I'm imagining.
Yep.
And the fake news with your twin, Ted Nelms, is on next week.
It's a week from today. It's Wednesday, December 13th.
Wednesday, December 13th
on Comedy Central.
Comedy Central. Ed Helms, everybody. Round of applause.
Hey, thank you.